card was the size of every other business card Ray Colburn had ever seen. White stock, simple font, no logo. He picked it up from the counter with 2 fingers, and the name came into focus under the display light. Marvin Gaye. He looked up. The man in the red beret was already watching him. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't performing anything. He just stood on the other side of the counter with a $60 acoustic guitar resting in his hands, waiting for Ray to put it together. It took Ray longer than it should have. Earlier that same afternoon, Ray had been sitting behind the register at Colburn, Music and Collectibles, reading a trade publication, when the door opened. He finished his sentence, set the magazine on the stool, and looked up. The man who came in wore a dark denim jacket, a red beret pulled low over his forehead, and a pair of worn canvas shoes. No one was with him. He didn't scan the shop the way tourists do, ceiling to floor, left to right, cataloging everything at once. He just moved into the room at his own pace and started looking at things up close. The way someone looks when they know what they're looking for, or at least know what they're not. Ray's shop sat on a side street off Sunset, easy to miss and meant to be. He'd spent the better part of 2 decades building a specific clientele: entertainment lawyers, record producers, session musicians turned investors who now thought about instruments the way other men thought about commercial property. They came in wearing good watches, used the right vocabulary, and didn't pause at the price. Ray had learned to assess people quickly. It was a skill he developed the same way any shopkeeper develops it, through repetition and through the particular kind of pride that comes from almost never being wrong. He read the man in the red beret and made a quiet decision. Hobbyist, maybe. Someone buying a gift. The jacket was soft at the elbows. No watch. Ray got up and walked the floor. "Something I can help you find?" "Just looking," the man said. His voice was low, and it didn't sound like a performance of quietness. Ray nodded once and walked to the back display case. He unlocked it with the key he kept on a separate ring, lifted out the centerpiece of the shop with both hands, and set it on the counter on a folded cloth. A 1959 Gibson ES 175, Cherry Sunburst original PAF pickups, one previous owner who'd played it in exactly 4 sessions and then put it in a climate-controlled closet for 20 years. The appraisal documentation was in the register. $9,500. It was the kind of piece that justified the rest of the shop existing. "This is what you'll want to see," Ray said. 59 ES 175. One owner, never toured. There's full provenance paperwork if you want to look it over. The man came to the counter and looked at the guitar. He didn't reach for it. "What does it sell for?" he asked. $9,500. Ray let the number settle. "These appreciate. I turned down $8,500 for this piece in the spring because I knew the market would move. Instruments at this level only go one direction." His eyes drifted briefly to the man's jacket. The man looked at the guitar a moment longer. Then he said, "I appreciate you showing me," and moved away from the counter without another word. Ray watched him drift toward the back of the shop, past the acoustics on the side wall, past the amplifier corner, into the narrow rear section that got the least light and the least attention. That part of the shop was storage in everything but name. Consignment pieces he'd accepted to close other deals. Instruments with cracked tops or failed repairs. Things priced to move quickly and then forgotten about. He kept them out of sight of the main floor because they weren't part of what Colburn music was supposed to be. The man crouched down near the bottom shelf. Half covered by a flattened cardboard box sat a small-bodied acoustic guitar. Older, the finish worn down to bare wood along the shoulder and the edge of the neck. The strings were visibly rusted. A strip of masking tape on the lower bout read $60 in faded marker. Ray had taken it in on a Tuesday morning in August. Standard 60-day consignment, signed paperwork, $60 asking price. He'd carried it to the back that same afternoon and hadn't looked at it since. "That's just a consignment," Ray called from the counter. "Nothing worth your time back there. Strings are shot, the setup is off. It'd cost more to get it playable than the guitar's worth. There's a Yamaha on the side wall if you need something functional." The man didn't answer. He turned the guitar over, ran his thumb along the back of the neck, then tilted the headstock toward the thin light from the doorway. His thumb slowed. He brought the guitar closer and looked at something on the back of the headstock. The front door opened. Ray looked up. An older man stepped in wearing a corduroy jacket with the collar turned up against the October air. He moved carefully, The kind of careful that comes from decades of work done in the same bent position. Ray recognized him immediately. Chester Mills. He'd brought the acoustic in on a Tuesday, filled out the consignment form without much conversation, and Ray hadn't seen him since. "Mr. Mills," Ray said, "the period ends at 6. You're aware of the terms." Chester stopped just inside the door. He wasn't looking at Ray. He was looking at the man crouched in the far corner, holding his guitar. The man in the beret stood. He looked at Chester. "Is this yours?" Chester crossed the floor slowly and took the guitar from him, turning it in his hands. "It is." He looked at the back of the headstock. "I filed these frets myself, recut the nut, reset the saddle, adjusted the neck angle. The guitar came to me in rough shape. Previous owner couldn't make it work." He ran his thumb along the carved figure on the headstock. Small, shallow, deliberate. A bird with its wings spread. "I put one of those on every instrument I worked on. My wife liked birds. After a while, it just became part of the process." The man in the beret looked at Chester the way you look at someone when you're deciding whether to ask the next question. "Where did you do this kind of work?" Chester handed the guitar back. "Detroit mostly. Early 60s. I was at Hitsville before it outgrew itself. Prepping guitars before sessions, making sure everything that went in front of a microphone was actually playable. Then out here, a couple of studios on Romaine, one on Melrose, wherever they needed someone who understood the instrument." He paused. "I was never in the room when the music happened. I was the step before." Something shifted in the air that Ray noticed without understanding. The man was quiet. Then, "Hitsville, what years?" 62 through about 67. After that, the work moved west and I followed it." The man nodded slowly. He held the guitar against his body, not playing it, not even positioning his hands to play it. Just holding it the way you hold something that's been somewhere you recognize. His eyes closed. And then, almost without sound, he began to hum. 4 bars, maybe 5. A melody that moved through the room at its own unhurried pace, pressing into the spaces between notes the way very few things do. Ray's hand stopped moving. He knew that sound. He had known it for years without knowing he knew it. It lived in a specific register, somewhere between the melody and the breath. And once you'd heard it a certain number of times, it became unmistakable in the way that very few voices become. Ray had 3 albums in a crate in the back room, with that voice on the sleeve. He looked at the man in the red beret standing in the worst-lit corner of his shop, holding a $60 guitar, humming with his eyes closed. And the thing he had decided about him 2 hours ago quietly came apart. The humming stopped. The man lowered the guitar, walked to the counter, and placed it down. He reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and set a card on the folded cloth. Ray picked it up. He looked at it for a moment. He set it back down. He didn't say anything. Marvin looked at Chester. "I came in today looking for a guitar for my son. He's 14, and he's been asking about it for months. I thought I'd find something here." He paused. "But this one has somewhere to be." He picked up the acoustic and held it out. Chester looked at the guitar. He didn't move for a moment. Then he took it with both hands and stood there holding it with his chin down. Marvin turned to Ray. His voice had the same pace it had carried all afternoon. Even no hurry behind it. "I'm doing some recording. New sessions early in the new year. I need people who understand the instrument from the inside." He looked toward Chester. "A man who's worked with someone long enough to hold their consignment knows something about them. That means something to me." Ray looked at the file behind the counter. Chester's form, August, handwritten. Name, instrument, price. Ray had taken the guitar from him, walked it to the back, put it on the shelf. He had not asked Chester a single question, had not looked at the fretwork or noticed the carved bird, or asked what those hands had been doing for the past 40 years. He had looked at the corduroy jacket and the careful walk and made a decision in under 4 seconds, the same way he made every decision that came through that door. And he had been wrong in a way that had nothing to do with not recognizing a famous man. Ray put his palm flat on the counter. "Mr. Mills." His voice came out quieter than usual. "I should have asked you about the guitar when you brought it in." Chester looked at him steadily. "Most people don't ask," he said. "It's been that way for a long time." Nobody said anything after that. Marvin paid $60 for the guitar. Ray didn't offer a discount, didn't feel like the right thing to do, And for once, he went with that feeling instead of around it. The transaction was quiet and brief. At the door, Chester said his name. Marvin stopped with his hand on the frame. "My wife passed in '78, Chester said. "I hadn't thought about those birds in a while." Marvin stood still. "She would have liked knowing they were there on instruments she never saw," he said. "That's why you kept doing it." He pushed the door open and walked out. The afternoon light on Sunset was flat and a little tired, the way October light gets in Los Angeles when the year starts to know it's ending. He turned up his collar and walked in the direction he'd come from. Chester Mills played rhythm guitar on 2 sessions for Marvin Gaye in early 1984. The album those sessions were meant for was never completed. Marvin died in April, one day before his 45th birthday. The music stayed unfinished, but Chester's name is in the session log from those 2 days. He was in the room when the music happened. That part is real, and nobody took it away from him. The guitar with the carved bird never got another price tag. Chester kept it on a nail above his workbench, where he could see it while he worked. When people who knew him asked what it was worth, he said there wasn't a number he could put on it. He was right about that.